In that live broadcast at the end of November, Dana made it clear to us how he wants to usher in the new era of the new deal with Paramount by pushing fighters who didn't earn their way to where they are, or as we call them, industry plants. And while Paddy is a somewhat acceptable plant, I see absolutely no logical scenario in which Diego Lopez deserves a second title shot after a first fight that wasn't particularly competitive. I understand that Dana White has his eye on the Mexican market for demographic reasons, but Diego himself, to this very moment, doesn't even seem sure whether he's being counted as Mexican or Brazilian, and it's easy to say that this is one of the least deserving title shots in the history of combat sports, with contenders like Movzar and Murphy existing in this weight class, especially with Volk insisting on fighting one of them.
You know, it doesn't look like it's going to be a Movzar. But I mean, I've tried with all of them, but now it looks like it's a Lerone Murphy. It makes a lot of sense. So let's do Lerone Murphy December. Sounds great.
But honestly, the UFC did not show this champion the respect he truly deserved after coming off one of their rarest achievements in combat sports history, reclaiming the belt after suffering 2 consecutive knockout losses at the age of 36. They kept him sidelined for more than 9 months, at a time when he had already reached 37 years old, and age doesn't get younger, despite there being active contenders in the division, until their return to Sydney in February. And on that night, it became clear that Dana's decision was disastrous. The gap between them had widened so much that the rematch became completely pointless. That is, with the exception of Craig Jones, who nearly cost Volkanovski the fight on 2 occasions. Part of the responsibility for his long layoff also falls on Islam, who blew up on the UFC's plan to return to Perth in September, preferring instead to fight Jack at Madison Square Garden.
And by the way, if you enjoyed the breakdown, please make sure to hit the like and subscribe. The goal is to hit 500 subs real soon, and your support genuinely helps. Much thanks.
Going back to the week before last, when we had just wrapped up an exciting fight week full of events in Las Vegas, we moved directly to Australia, or as it's called, the land down under, assuming you believe the earth is round. And on a rare occasion, we got 2 numbered events back to back, which was the bare minimum Dana could offer us after 6 weeks of nothing. But to be completely honest with you, fight week in Sydney was the exact opposite of what we saw in Las Vegas, with no real momentum surrounding the event, and the numbers reflected that clearly. The biggest combat sports story that week was discovered that Jeffrey Epstein was a John Jones fan, and that was before Jones even became the light heavyweight champion. When Dana announced last year that Ilya would vacate the featherweight title and that Volk and Diego would fight for it,
so Topuria will be moving up to 155 pounds and will be vacating the featherweight titles.
That initial announcement overshadowed the reality of Movzar being denied a title shot, despite objections from some fans who complained about Dana's decision at the time. But when the rematch was announced,
Alexander Volkanovski versus Diego Lopez,
the fans' reaction spiraled out of control because this time deserving contenders were being robbed.
Lerone Murphy has won 9 fights in a row. Movzar Evloev has won 9 fights in a row. Lerone Murphy is coming off a spinning back elbow. He should be next. He should be next.
However, as I've always told you, I personally never had an issue with Dana's decision here, after what Diego did to that barking dog, and I wouldn't mind watching a 3rd fight between him and Volk. But reality was different. Fan interest simply wasn't there from the start, beginning with that lifeless press conference in Vegas, all the way to the kickoff of Fight Week in Sydney, Australia. So that you don't close the video immediately, let's quickly move past that unexciting Fight Week. Naturally, like any Fight Week on the continent of Oceania, it had to begin with those rituals specific to the indigenous people of the land. My main focus that week was on the 2 lightweight fights on the card, Fiziev versus Ruffy and Dan Hooker versus BSD. As fan frustration grew, the closer we got to the rematch, Diego told them to take their complaints to the UFC. And honestly, who could blame him for accepting an opportunity like that?
Só quer ficar com raiva, se o pessoal quer criticar, vai reclamar com você, pô, não comigo por ter aceitado uma luta.
To show you just how bad that fight week was, most of the conversations with Volk revolved around other contenders, Movzar and Murphy, and maybe even the possibility of Arman moving down to featherweight.
Movzar, Lerone, incredible records, or even Arman, if he was to come down, that's a challenge. So that'll be definitely something. And I feel like my takedown defense is pretty solid, so that'll definitely be a fun one.
And please, Volk, don't even think about that anymore.
Yeah, we'll see what happens from here. You know, whether Ilya will be bouncing back. I think he said he would like in mid-year. We'll see what happens there. I mean, yeah, you got a stacked division. Obviously, you got Armin as well. We'll see what happens. Maybe a couple of wins. Maybe I'm back in that conversation. We'll see.
As for this creature, I honestly don't know what he was trying to accomplish throughout the week.
E vou te falar mais, vou lá fazer o quê? Porque eu tô pura pra te quebrar. Já vou te avisando, hein?
At the open workouts, it looked like Volk had picked up some kind of injury, which slightly shifted the betting lines. But on fight night, there was no sign of it, despite Joe Lopez later revealing that Volk had been dealing with a serious shoulder injury.
To be fair, Alex, 4 weeks ago, we didn't think he was going to fight. He pulled his shoulder out. And we
Really?
Yeah, really. Yes, he's been compromised for the last 4 weeks with a busted shoulder.
At the press conference, there really wasn't much to note between Volk, who was wearing a Cooking with Volk apron, and Diego Lopez. Respect was clearly the dominant feeling between them, to the point where Diego even got him to sing once again.
And I will fall for you over again.
The only real excitement came from the two lightweight face-offs.
Like I say, it's gonna be a bloodbath, and
Don't tempt me with a
Let's
good
see,
time, baby. Don't
man.
tempt me with a good time, baby.
let's see.
Then the fighters faced off again, some of them for a second or even third time, and Dan, who has grown complicated about face-offs for reasons you already know, wanted to stay as far away as possible from Benoit.
That's close enough. I'm not getting any closer there.
As you may have noticed, Dana White was not in Australia last week, and Mick Maynard acted as the separator during the face-offs. Later, you will learn where Dana actually was. After his fight with Islam, many of us believed that Volk would struggle badly when returning to the 66kg division, but he continued to prove his professionalism as a champion every single time he stepped into the cage. As soon as the scales opened on Friday morning, and immediately after Lopez, he stepped on the scale with full professionalism and made championship weight.
144.5, the official weight for Alexander Volkanovski.
The four lightweight contenders followed shortly after. Later on, as the weigh-in show continued, flyweight fighter Aaron Tao arrived, having requested from the start that a curtain be placed, despite the fact that he was required to make 57 kgs. And despite the absence of DC in the studio, the same man who once held the towel at UFC 210, Aaron rested his elbow on the curtain, shifting part of his weight away from the scale. As the scale wobbled, the official panicked and took more than 2 minutes to recenter it. In the end, Aaron appeared nearly 2 kilograms underweight.
122.25.
Meaning he had made weight by a massive margin. When that idiot thought his plan had worked, the official ordered him back onto the scale, revealing that his real weight was over 58 kilograms, about 1.5 kilos over the flyweight limit.
129, the official weight for Mr. Toe.
He then tried to cheat again by keeping his heel off the edge of the scale. Later, the UFC cancelled the fight, another painful blow at the start of the Paramount era. Then during the face-offs, the fighters of UFC 325 came face to face, and Diego knew that this might be his final chance to fight for the featherweight title.
Yeah, I think now it's my time. It's my time because I know this maybe is my last chance in 145, you know, so...
What adjustments is he going to make? He's going to think he can, he knows that didn't do the best job of cutting me off and all that. So I think he's going to try that. But I mean, you can't just do that, just do it. You need to have some real strategy behind it and you need real understanding of doing that.
You might ask, if Hunter ranks higher than matchmaker Mick Maynard, why doesn't he stand in the middle instead of Dana? In my personal opinion, if he did, it would be a clear message that Dana has stepped down from his position. So in order to preserve appearances, he delegates that role to Mick. Ironically, as we entered our second event with Paramount, we were still dealing with the staph infection rumors. Volk had a strange mark on his ear, while Benoit had one on his chest. though it looked smaller than the one he had on his forehead against Dustin. And as we entered the second week of the new era, it began to feel like contracting a staph infection had become one of the best advantages you could have when trying to win a fight. With the start of UFC 325 in Sydney, we woke up that morning to the news of Shafkat's shocking injury relapse, meaning he will be out of the competition for yet another year. Honestly, I don't know how he finds the motivation to keep fighting. He was removed from the 77kg rankings on Tuesday, while Colby continues to rise within them, and that idiot Ian Gary actually believes he's the one who derailed Shafkat's career. But whatever the reason may be, as they say, one man's misfortune is another man's gain. After a fairly decent preliminary card, we moved on to the main card, where Coylan continued his rise in the lightweight division, a moment I still don't erase from my memory. To be completely honest, I see him struggling badly against a top 10 opponent who relies primarily on wrestling. Then we moved up to heavyweight, the return of Tai Tuivasa after 5 consecutive losses, and an absence lasting more than a year and a half, against Alisson Teixeira, coming off the first loss of his career to Derek Lewis. That fight was a perfect embodiment of the UFC's catastrophic failure in handling the heavyweight division. Somehow they managed to lose Jones and Ngannou, and it seems Rico slipped through their fingers with that Turkish tweet. What we're left with is a one-eyed champion locked in a dispute with the organization's president, and a fight I'd honestly be embarrassed to show to friends who don't follow combat sports. Even Hunter Campbell was left speechless. Then we officially arrived at what we'd all been waiting for, and truthfully, after Ruffy's loss to Benoit, then leaving the Fighting Nerds camp to join Volk in Australia, followed by John Silva unfollowing him during fight week, I was confident that this confidence would suffer badly against the surging Fiziev. But after a breath-holding first round, Ruffy absolutely dismantled him in the second.
Over him! Look at Fiziev! In the distance! It's done! And there it is! Wow.
I still believe that, with a different game plan, Raphael might have able to change the course of the fight. Later, we learned that Ruffy had been suffering from the flu that week, from his brother's, and that he woke up on fight day with severe back pain. He also revealed that he never fully split from Fighting Nerds. But then, why didn't he wear those glasses? And why did John Silva publicly disown him?
Zero chance. Acabou. Ele tem os problemas internos dele que ele tem que resolver. Espero que procure ajuda. Não só ele, como vários outros atletas, assim como eu. Passo com o psiquiatra toda semana. Então, acho que espero que ele procure, outras pessoas procurem, ele siga a vida dele, ele siga bem. Mas Jean e Ruff não existe mais, não. E, papo reto, só existia na minha cabeça.
Then we moved on to my personal main event. As usual, Dan started with absolute chaos and managed to hurt Benoit, who has always struggled with Dan's aggressive, unpolished style, as well as his own cardio issues. From the opening minutes, it looked like Dan was on his way back to the win column after stumbling against our man. But after successfully defending the wrestling attempts, he inexplicably chose to clinch with Benoit and attempted the same guillotine that had failed against our man multiple times. That made it far easier for Benoit to impose his wrestling, and in the second round, just like our man, he completely altered Dan Hooker's face.
Just over a minute to go, round 2. That's a good elbow. This could be it. Dan's blocking.
Yep. Elbows, that is going to be what ends the fight.
It is insane if Dan Hooker makes it out.
Over. But he's punching, but why?
It's over.
Despite my personal dislike for him, there is no one at 70 kilograms who comes to fight like Benoit Saint Denis. Honestly, the fact diminishes the impact of our man's most recent win. If you want to make a fighter look impressive, put him in front of Dan Hooker. I highly doubt our man will answer those calls.
My first point of interest is to fight the winner of Charles or Holloway, or the winner of Justin versus Ilya. But if it has to happen, I will fight Arman, of course, and I will take his spot.
But Benoit has now officially surpassed Paddy in the rankings and entered the top 5 of the lightweight division. He has no choice but to look upward, or perhaps downward at someone ranked below him, as the lightweight picture becomes increasingly complicated to the point of of being hard to follow, no one that night, aside from Benoit and Ruffy, was happier than Paddy Pimblett.
Nice to see Dan get TKO'd after the he was chatting. He probably enjoyed me losing last week. That was probably a generational hate watch with him. I never got finished though.
Then it was time for the official main event. There's no doubt that Volk has one of the best walkouts in combat sports today, especially when his iconic song Down Under hits. Now imagine that in Sydney. Even though the fight took place at 3 PM, the crowd was far better than the one in Perth. But if you weren't inside the stands of Godos Bank Arena, the only reason you might watch this fight is that after 9 months since the first bout, and with Volk turning 37, there's no doubt he's physically a diminished version of himself. The question isn't whether that's true, it's whether that age-related decline would be enough for Diego to make a difference compared to their first encounter. What's surprising is that somehow Volkanovski has actually gotten better with age. He looked faster than in the first fight, sharper both offensively and defensively, and his angles and movement left Diego with very few opportunities to close the distance. More importantly, we learned that he can still absorb shots from one of the most ferocious contenders in the division. Not only that, Diego broke his own feet trying to kick Volk, and what surprised me most was that Diego wasn't any more aggressive than he was in the first fight. The closest round was the second, which could have gone either way. In the third round, Diego dropped him briefly, and no Joe, it wasn't a slip.
You slipped.
Diego came close to locking in a guillotine choke, but no one is submitting Volk after he escaped Brian Ortega's guillotine. The fight week nearly slipped out of Volk's hands twice, both due to Craig Jones' teachings. The first time was in the second round, which likely cost him the round. After attacking a guillotine, he found himself on bottom, where Diego found remarkable success against Jan. Volk chose to use one of Craig's foundational techniques to return to standing, but it ended with a black belt on his back. Thankfully, the round ended. The second time came at the end of the fifth round, when he attempted the same reversal or escape, call it whatever you want, allowing Diego to take his back once again. To be fair to Greg, Volk didn't execute those techniques correctly. Then, emboldened by surviving those dangerous positions, he tried returning to ground fighting and nearly had his arm ripped off. But his physical build is nearly impossible to deal with in grappling and jiu-jitsu exchanges. Just ask Islam. With all due respect to boxing fans, the grappling exchanges at the end were far more exciting than the Stevenson versus Lopez. In the end, it was clear that Volk had successfully defended his belt for the second time and tied Aldo's legendary record for the most title wins in featherweight history. Some weren't happy with a 50-45 scorecard, but I personally had no issue with it, even though 49-46 better reflects how the fight actually went. What I respect most about this champion is that he mentioned Movsar and Liron by name after the fight. There's no doubt now that he is the greatest featherweight of all time.
Maybe Movsar and Lerone Murphy.
What I don't understand is how, after Tuesday's ranking updates, Khamzat is still ranked above him in the pound-for-pound list. After the official scorecards were read, the top contenders immediately rushed to X to secure their place in the #1 contender spot. The champion was ready for both, though he believes Movsar would have the upper hand over Liron when they meet in London.
Who do I think's going to win that fight? I think Movsar wins that fight. So I think if they do fight, I'll probably end up facing him. I just think Movsar ends up grabbing hold. I think he's going to be stronger. I think Movsar takes that.
With that said, I stopped betting against Liron a long time ago, figuratively speaking.
I just believe I'm going to take him into deep waters. Everyone, it's no secret what I'm going to do in it. It's going to be defensive wrestling and vicious offense, and that's it. I'm just going to put him under pressure and pressure him and make him make a mistake. I'm going to be going for the knockout. I'm going to be hunting for the knockout from bell to bell.
Even if the matchup doesn't happen in London, I'd still pick Liron to be next for Movsar, who has a solid history for long layoffs and withdrawals, having just pulled out of his bout with Aaron Pico, allowing Murphy to step in. To be fair, only 5 of Movsar's 11 cancelled fights were actually his fault. Then suddenly another ranked fighter inserted his name into the #1 contender discussion at 66 kgs, and I have no idea what he was on when he tweeted that. We've reached a point where I wouldn't even be surprised if Dana picked him next for a title shot. Thankfully, Volk shut the door on the idea of John or Arman fighting for the belt before Movzar or Liron.
I've got a responsibility. I talk about having a responsibility as a champion. I don't think enough champions look at it that way. For me, I look at it as a responsibility. There's rankings for a reason, there's people that deserve it.
He responded to that crash can after saying he'd train with Ilya just to break him.
Oh, he said that? Yeah. Oh, okay. I don't know. I think he's a bit upset about the Ruffy thing, but...
Which led that idiot to accuse Volk of ducking him. Finally, on Monday, it was officially announced that Liron and Movzar will face off in London on the night of March 21st. You may be wondering now, where was Dana White? He was in Las Vegas preparing the Apex, or the Meta Apex, to host the second Zuffa boxing event. This time, to be honest, it was much better than the first event, and it seems we now have a boxing version of Tai Tuivasa. Dana then showed up to the press conference and couldn't have cared less about what happened in Australia. All that was on his mind from the previous night was Gerald Miller's fake hair.
What were my thoughts on last night? Yeah. The thing that stood out was the toupee for me last night. One of the craziest things I've ever seen in my life. Yeah. Are you talking about boxing or UFC?
Volkanovski.
Yeah. The UFC card was awesome. Loved it.